Greetings, everybody. Greetings and salutations. This is Melody, and I'm with you for another episode of I'm Just Saying. This is my second week of being able to share with you. And, in the last video, I really just kind of said hi, kind of told you what this podcast, whatever you want to call it, kind of just told you what it was about and what the impetus was. So just for those who may not have seen the first one, you can always go back and check it out. But if you didn't see the first one, I just was sharing that God really put I'm Just Saying on my heart. And it started as a Facebook group where I would do videos of, I didn't do videos. Every Saturday, I would present a question for people to kind of think on during the week. And you could comment on that question. And the questions would be about things in culture. So I did things like the Me Too movement. I covered things like how Christians dress and whether or not we're dressing too sexy. And that one was called, something like Sexy in the Church or something like that. And that was one where I had a video with my friend, and she had a differing viewpoint as me. But that was fun. We had a lot of interaction live with that one. And so this is just kind of an extension of that, where I want to talk about current events. I want to talk about the biblical answer, God's biblical response to these things. This is just the beginning, though. So as I said before, if you notice some things that may need to change, some aesthetics that need to get better, they will. But hang with me if you will. Pay attention to the content. I talked about myself just as a recap. My name is Melody, and I'm a proud Christian. Very glad to be starting this podcast. Very glad to interact with people and kind of hear their ideas. I always will welcome people who don't agree with me, but I also definitely very highly suggest being respectful. I don't want to say demand, but that's really how I feel. I demand respect, not just for me, but for others, because we all have a right to our opinions. And even if we are vehemently against them, just like that vocab, that vehemently, even if you're vehemently against what somebody agrees or adamantly against it, they still have a right to that opinion. So I just want to let you guys know that's what I value. So a friend of mine said, hey man, maybe you should let them know a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your testimony in regard to Christianity. And so I asked the Lord into my heart at age 10. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and they were strong women of God, not perfect women, but strong women of God, and they are both gone to glory. Now, those are some stories that I could tell you about their lives and just different things regarding how they raised me and why I have the foundational faith that I have today. And it is truly a blessing. I could get off on a tangent about other people that you all may know in culture who have that foundational strength, that foundation in Christ. And it is a blessing. But like I told one of my good friends who was not necessarily raised that way, it's a blessing just to know Jesus. So even if you weren't raised in a Christian household, if you found out about Jesus, if the Lord allowed you to hear his gospel and you said yes, then you are indeed blessed. But I wanted to share a testimony about God's faithfulness. I have a master's degree in ministry, and I graduated with that master's 2 years ago. And I want to tell the story about how God showed himself faithful. This may be a two-part because it's not really long, but it's detailed. And one thing you'll learn about me is I am a person who likes to be very detailed, maybe to a fault, but my friends know I'll go here and I'll go there and I'll be like, let me give you the background for this. And and for those who flow like that, they're like, no problem, I can roll with you. But for those who are like, okay, get straight to the point, this may be a challenge for you, but I hope that you actually enjoy the details. So So I don't have a title for this particular episode, but the title would have something to do with God's faithfulness in the midst of fear, in the midst of doubt, in the midst of just lightweight going a little bit crazy about something. So let me start at the beginning. So, as I said, I graduated in 2021 with a master's in ministry. And the school that I went to was in Oklahoma City. So I am from Ohio. So of course I took those courses online. But when I got finished, I said, I'm going to go ahead and walk. I'm going to walk because I did this program without my mother here, without my grandmother here, and both of them were very much into education. My mom kept saying when she was still living, I want you to get your master's. I want you to get your master's, because she wanted to get her master's. She did have her bachelor's. So, and actually, my grandmother had aunts and uncles who were college educated. Mom's side, my grandmother's aunts and uncles, so that's a few generations back, went to school, and so went to college. So I knew that I was going to eventually get my master's degree, but I would tell my mom, I'm not going just to go. You know, I have to have a reason. That's time, that's money that you have to spend. And so, unfortunately, she never made it. She did not make it to see me graduate with my master's degree, but I know she would have been proud. And so, anyway, so I said I was going to walk. And so I was like, well, my first inclination was I'm going to see how many friends I can get together to go with me and or family, and we will drive. And from where I live in Ohio to Oklahoma City is like a 17-hour drive. And that is a long road trip. And that does not include stopping for gas, stopping for something to eat, just taking a rest, maybe to stretch your legs, none of that. So I sent an invitation on Facebook, right? And so by the time it dwindled down, there were only 3 people who could actually go with me. A few more than that actually say, yeah, I'm interested in going, sure. But people's schedules, money, different things got in the way. So I had 3 of my ride or dies, and I am blessed because I really actually have a lot of really good friends. And so, but 3 of my ride or dies decided they would go with me. I won't call their names, but it was 2 girls and a guy. And the guy is like my brother. The girls are literally like my sisters. And one of the young ladies has a daughter. So her daughter, who was like a god baby to me, went. So I'm like, okay, good group. So my one girlfriend, I was like, well, hey, do you want to take this road trip? And she was like, I can't do it. She was like, I am not. And you know who you are if you watch this. She was like, I can't do it. She said, and my baby is not going to make it that many hours. So she was like, if I go, I'm flying. So I'm still holding on to hope, though, because I'm like, well, she could fly, but I still could drive. Now, here's the issue with that. The other girlfriend of mine does not drive. So it would have to be me. I would have had to take in the whole 17, 18, 19, 20 alone. And as for my brother in the Lord, he lives in Atlanta. And so he was like, I'm not driving from Atlanta. There, I'm getting on the plane. So, and he flies all the time because he is a flight attendant. So I was like, this is really, really long. So I started praying about it as I try to do everything. And as it turned out, the Lord was like, get on that plane. Now, what you need to know is I had not flown in a plane in almost 30 years prior to that. Okay? And my first experience, that was my first experience flying back then. And I'm not going to say I wasn't a fan, but here's the thing for me about flying. And some of you may be able to relate to this. My issue is the height. Some people are cool with height. Some people don't have a problem with height. Just the thought of being that high in the sky was an issue for me. There's so many pieces to this, so many layers. But I went when I was 17 to a church convention, a youth convention. And so my mother made arrangements, paid for me to go. And she was like, I remember her saying, do you want to go to San Antonio? Excuse me. To this convention. And I was like, yeah. And then it dawned on me. I was like, well, how am I getting out there? And she was like, you would have to get on the plane. Now, my family, that nuclear family, my mom, my grandmother, none of us were plane people. So my grandmother had never flown. She did end up flying before she died, though, which was cool. And my mother had never flown. So I was like, yo, I don't know. I do want to go because I'm a people person, but I don't know, Mom. Then I was like, yeah, I'll go. So my mom kind of encouraged me because she knew she had never flown and she didn't want me to be bound, like any good parent. She didn't want me to be bound to the same fear. So I got on that plane, and I'm gonna tell y'all, the experience of flying, once you get in the air, I'm okay with, kinda okay. If I could just get past thinking about how high we are. So my first time flying at 17, I remember the pilot kept saying, and now we've approached 24,000 feet, and now we've approached, and I was like, yeah! In my mind, I'm thinking that's too high for humans to be, for real. Now, some people say I'm closer to God, and that just didn't help me, because I'm like, but I'm not ready to die. And so I'm like, did anybody else think about Biggie Smalls ready to die? Anyway, I was like, I'm not ready to die. So, I do want to be close to the Lord, but not in this way. So I remember one of the young pastors on the flight kept saying, think about Jesus. Just keep your mind on Jesus. Y'all, I was so nervous on these flights. There were 2 flights. One, I think, was from Northeast Ohio to Indianapolis, and then the other one was from Indy to Texas. And neither of them were long flights, but they were too long for me because I was like, when is this thing over? So I will say, though, the cool thing about flying, in my opinion, was looking at, because one of the flights when we were coming home, I think it was at night. And just being able to see all the lights of the cities, and you get to actually see the pattern of the cities and how the planners planned it out. That part was really cool. Being in the clouds is actually very cool. So those are things I did enjoy. And some people get nervous at takeoff and landing. Landing did not scare me. And maybe it's because I'm thinking we about to be on the ground. And I don't know, I just have faith that we were going to make it on the ground safely. And I still hold that today. Like, landing is, let's go. Let's get back on the ground. Thank you. So anyway, so going to Oklahoma City, let's get back to a couple of years ago at my graduation. So the Lord was like, you guys can't see this whole shirt because I am sitting down, but it says, you can see the trust in the Lord part. It is actually Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And that is exactly what God wanted me to do, is to trust in Him. And so I felt like the Lord opened the door and said, hey, go ahead and get on that plane and go walk for your diploma, your degree. Okay, so I did. All right, so let's go to the day we started. A friend of mine took us, me and my friend who can't drive, took us to the airport. You know, we had done all the planning. I was trying to remember. Ooh, excuse me. I'm back. I was trying to remember all the things that I couldn't remember from years ago. Because when I flew the first time, it was before 9/11. And so you could just walk right up to the gate. You could walk right up to the plane. Nobody really was, there might have been a little bit of security, but I don't remember there being anything. I mean, this is 1992. So this was a long time ago. So it was different. So I knew I needed to kind of talk to my friend who's the flight attendant. He gave us some pointers, and my other friend had already flown. But the friend who was flying with me, and this is going to be important later, had not flown. This was her first time flying, the one who was flying with me. We were leaving from the same place. My friend with the little girl had already flown. She said she doesn't mind flying. They were leaving from a different city, still in Ohio, but a different city. Me and my friend flying with me had never flown before. Keep that in mind. So we got everything together, got taken down to the airport, and I was okay. I was like, you know what, Lord? I know that you said this is why it's important to have a relationship with Jesus. Really, honestly, nobody is perfect, but when you really do your best to stay connected to the Lord, He will help you to hear Him. And so I had prayed. Now, don't get me wrong. I had prayed a lot. Okay. I had prayed a lot. And so the Lord was just assuring me, yes, this is what I want you to do. Go to Oklahoma City. So for the first flight in almost 30 years, I was okay. And, you know, they talk about muscle memory. Muscle memory is a real thing, because I didn't like takeoff back then. I didn't like takeoff this time. I held my friend's hand tight, and both of us kind of held each other's hand tight until we got all the way up. Now, one thing that I noticed is that we were in a smaller plane, because years ago, you know, the planes were bigger. They were big. And back then, you couldn't really feel the incline. Like, you could feel it a little bit more in these smaller planes, but the thing that was better for me in the smaller plane is that it got up there faster. So we were up there, and I was nervous, but years ago on the bigger plane, I remember it being like boom, boom. It was like I could feel every time we actually went up, and I think that's what made me more nervous. But smaller plane, it was a little bit easier in that regard. Once we got up there, when I say muscle memory, I remember being able to feel, it's almost like you're riding on the bus, but you're in the air. Years ago, that kind of freaked me out, because I'm like, how are we having bumping and we're not on the ground, right? For those of you who understand aerodynamics and understand flying, you know what that is. Now that I'm older, I know what that is. Of course, that's air patterns and pockets and stuff. So that part was okay too. We were going from Ohio to Chicago, Illinois. And I knew it's a short flight. So I was okay. So I said, you know what? All right. Okay. This is all right. I said, because years ago, I couldn't even play people. If y'all remember Game Boy, I remember I was a teenager. A couple people had Game Boys, and somebody was trying to help me feel better and gave me their Game Boy so I could play. And I love Mario Brothers, and I couldn't even play. I was so jacked up, I couldn't play. But this time, I was nervous to where I didn't want to try to watch anything on my phone. But the first flight went so well that I was like, okay, this second flight, I'm gonna watch something. Child. So anyway, we got to Chicago. Everything was good. Man, listen, I am gonna have to make this a part 2, because this is gonna be long. And we are at about 20 minutes, and I don't want these to go really over 30. So let me just tell you the part that's gonna keep you going. So I said, I'm good. I'll watch something on this next flight from Chicago to Oklahoma City. I'm like, I'm good. I'm a little bit nervous still, but I'm all right. All right. I'm like, okay, thank you, Jesus. It's all right. Man, listen. Got on the flight, similar size plane. Everything was cool. On our way, hold each other's hands, get up into the air, and probably 2/3 of the way, Lord, 2/3 of the way into the flight, I saw the overhead light go ding. I said, don't have a lot of flying experience, but had enough to remember that if I knew that we weren't anywhere near, the lighting. And these are the fun things about being a new podcaster. Thank you for putting up with me and your patience. So, said, man, I can watch something. So I was looking on Amazon Prime to see what I could find. So I found Good Trouble about John Lewis, the civil rights activist life, because he had just passed not too long, I think, before that. So I said, let me watch Good Trouble. It was getting good. I was able to, still was a little bit nervous, because you all have to remember, in the back of my head, I'm still like, we're several thousand feet in the air. Not even so much thinking about speed, even though that's a whole different ball of wax. But I was like, oh my gosh, we're still several thousand feet in the air. But I was starting to calm down enough, and my friend seemed to be doing okay. She may have even been falling asleep. I don't remember. Which I'm like, you better go for a first-time person being asleep. I still can't. They're going to have to give me something for me to go to sleep. Anyway, so about 2/3 of the way of the flight, the light went ding. And I knew that we were not close to landing, not close enough for them to start talking to us about preparing for landing. I was like, okay, we're about to hit turbulence. Thanks, Lord, for telling me. Oh, Lord. So, of course, I just was like, Lord, I just started praying. I was like, all I could say was, please don't let it be too bad, and please don't let it be too long. And sure enough, the dipping. A little bit of dip here, a little bit of dip there. And I was like, whoa. And we thought it was okay, and then it was just and I was just silently, you don't know how you will react and what may be traumatic to you until you're actually in a situation. Now, those who know me know I'm kind of loud. I'm kind of, hey, but one thing, I can't think of the other situation, but one thing I have learned about me is when things get real crazy like this, I think until it actually hits me what's going on, well, even after, I usually stay fairly calm. I think my brain starts kicking in and paying attention. Now, don't get me wrong. If I'm paying attention and I realize things are cuckoo for real, then I might start freaking out. I don't know. Thank God I have not. I pray I never am, but thank God I have never been in that situation. So what happened in this situation is we did start hitting turbulence. I was praying, Lord, please. My friend, though, bless her. I ain't mad at her because I understand. Jesus, 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 Jesus. That's what my friend was saying. I love her. If she sees this, she knows who she is. And I said, sis, calm down. Now, let me tell you why I was able to calm down, even though I was still nervous. It's completely uncomfortable, but two things happened that helped me understand that it was going to be okay, barring any other situation. One was, I was looking around in the cabin, and everybody else who probably had flown way more than me kind of had their heads down. Nobody was screaming. Nobody was like, hey, what in the world's going on? Nobody was even really talking to one another. I said, okay, check. They're not freaking out. Second thing, for those who have flown. The stewardess, the flight attendant. I know I'm a little bit old talking about stewardess. The flight attendant still was walking up and down the aisles. I said, okay, another check. If it were very serious, they would have them sit down. So I told my friend again, you know what? I think it's gonna be okay. I said, but I pray that it doesn't last long. And I asked the flight attendant, I stopped her and I said, excuse me. I said, I don't remember the pilot saying, because usually the pilot will say, hey, we may run into some turbulence about 30 minutes into the flight or whatever. And she said he did say it. Now, I'm not going to say that the lady was lying, because as nervous as I was, he might have said it. So thankfully, it was only the last third of the flight where we had. So maybe, I'm going to say, boy, my math right now. I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And it wasn't constant for 20 minutes, but it seemed like it may have lasted about that long. So this is where I think I'm going to wrap up. Just remember, we're just coming into that turbulence. My friend was freaking out a little bit, and I was like, okay, calm down. Okay, I will end with this. We landed fine. But next time, I'll tell you what happened in Oklahoma City, and on the way home, how God showed himself faithful. Thank you for joining another episode of I'm Just Saying. I pray that you join me, just learning something about me. We are going to get into current topics, and we're going to do that soon as I kind of finish letting you know who I am. I hope that's okay. God bless you, and I holla.